Good evening, guys. Tonight what we're going to do is we're going to build a 6S battery, and if this video is of use to you, please hit the like button. When you get started on doing your own batteries, the most important thing is to get organized and have equipment available so that you can get the job done. And now I'm going to show you what equipment I have here on the desk. First of all, we have some tape, a pair of decent cutters, a pen for assisting us to solder, some solder. These are actually battery holders, and as you can see, they just fit together as that one is fitted together. We need the balancing lead that we're going to use for the 6S. We need an XT60 lead that we're going to be using for the battery to go to the quad, and we need some metal tape, which in this case is 0.15 millimeters thick, in addition to which we're going to be using the SONY VTC6 batteries. They are 3000 milliamp hour batteries, and at the back you'll notice there's a multimeter. Reason for that is we're going to check every battery before we start building it, just to ensure that the battery actually has charge. Built a battery some months ago, and when I finished I found one of the cells was dead even though it was brand new. That was a problem, so we're not going to have that problem today. You need a soldering iron of some sort, a soldering station, and I'm fortunate enough to have this machine, which is a welder to weld the battery, so I do not actually have to solder on the batteries. When we look at a battery, we can start off by having a look at a 1S battery. A 1S battery is clearly a single battery, which means one cell. Why they use S I don't know. And you have positive and negative at the top. If we now go to a 2S battery, what we have is we have the battery connected together where we come down from the positive down to the negative, from the negative across to the positive, up to the negative. The balance lead is shown at the top, and we need to connect the third wire, which is the balance wire, from the bottom where the intersect is between the two batteries, and that is how we form a 2S battery. We're now going to shift on to the 6S battery, and I'm going to just put this camera on a stand. Sorry about that, guys. No, it's not going to work. All right, now 6 battery, we have the same. We go positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, all the way across, so that we end up with a negative on this side and a positive on that side. Now from here, this will come to our connector, which is going to connect to our quad. That is the black wire. All of these generally are going to be the red wires. Now we need a wire from here to there. We need a wire from there to there. We need a wire from here to there. We need a wire from there to there. And we need a wire from here to there. So that gives us a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wires. And obviously that is your all reds generally, and this one is a black wire. And the trick is to put all these plates together on here and then solder on the wires, and we will show you that in a moment. Okay, so starting off, the first thing we're going to do is open the boxes with all the batteries in them, and we're going to take each battery and we're going to put the negative on the bottom and the positive on the top, and we want to see 3.64 volts or thereabouts. You can't see it because the thing is shining, so let's just lift that up a little bit. There we go again, 3.64 volts. I'm now going to test all the other 5 and make sure they all have the same amount of voltage in them, and we will move on from there. Alright, we've got all 6 batteries, and all of them have been checked, and all of them have 3.64 volts, which means we can start the actual build. One of the things I'm going to suggest is that if you buy these, make sure you drill the holes between them. And the reason I'm saying that is because, I'm just going to clip this together quickly. That's how it clips together. And if you have a look at that one, there are no holes anywhere inside it, but if you look at that one, you'll see there are holes through this section here. The reason for that is you're going to need to put wires down through the center, and you want to keep it as tight as possible, and we don't want wires floating all over the outside of the battery. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by basically putting our batteries in here. So we know that this one is our first battery, and we can either go that way across, it doesn't really matter which. So for example, if that is now positive, I can now put this one in so it's a negative. And the next one that will be next to that if I'm coming across this way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one down next to it. So now you've got a positive going down to a negative. We've got a positive on the bottom, back up to a negative, and we then want to have another positive there, which is now going to come across to that one and down, and then it's going to go across to this side. So we need a positive on that one, and we need a negative between those two. So now if you have a look at the stack on the battery, what we've got is we've got positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. So that's basically how our battery is going to be started out. This is the second unit that we can now clip on top like that, which makes it real easy. And yes, I know it's a little more bulky than perhaps a LiPo, but at the end of the day, we have a battery that is intact and quite simple to hold. Now from there, we're going to want to put our negative and our positive at that point. So it comes out of the side, and we're going to want to have our balance lead coming out here as well. And in order to achieve that, as you can see, we're going to be feeding a number of wires through this battery down to the bottom. Now, there's a couple of ways we can do that. We can take all of these ones out of here and then solder them onto the bottom of the battery and then basically cut to length. But I'm going to, at this point in time, just start doing the spot welding. And we're going to now go to spot welding. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to basically work out how we're going to wire these batteries. And like I said, we want to start off with a positive and a negative on the top. So if I'm coming down a positive, we know that this part of the battery is going to be the start and that's the end. So this is where we're going to measure 22 volts or 24 volts across these two terminals. So when we come down, in order to achieve that, I need to go to this one. So I'm going to go across there. So what I need is I need a piece of metal that will go into that area and be about that long, which I'm going to cut with these side cutters. And again, so what we're going to do is we're going to put that piece of metal in there, and you've got to be careful when you do this because you don't want to basically short the bloody batteries out, but basically that's where it's going to end up. And having a spot welder is real simple because we just push it into that position, press up. Who's going off now? You're still recording, right? Okay, so we're going to put that in the spot welder, push it up in the air, press on the foot pedal, and immediately we get a contact made. Now we have a point across there where that is now welded onto that battery. So if we now take our multimeter, go back to voltage, I'm going to go to 20 volts at the moment because we know we're near a high voltage just yet. And we now measure those first two cells. That's that one across to that one. So what we're going to have if we measure across here now is we're going to have 7.27 volts. Now basically that's telling me that we've now created a 2S battery. So we're now going to continue and turn this into a 3S battery with another piece of flat metal and turning the battery over again. So we've come down the battery, across the battery, up to the top, and now we want to come across here to this one. So once again we need a piece of this metal that will come from that battery to that one there, and we can cut that and we now have this battery where we can put that in there. It's a little bit long, I'm just going to trim it. Okie dokie, so right, just checking again. So we've come down, across, up, now we're going to go that way. So we put that across the top, and we're going to come back to our spot welder here. And we're going to spot weld this piece of wire on here. Now if we actually measure the voltage, okay, we now measure from that terminal to that terminal, and we should get what is basically a 3S battery. We've created the 2, we're now creating the 3, voltage. There we go, 10.93. So that tells us that we've now got a 3S battery. Now you need to be careful doing this, because if you actually short it, you're going to have batteries going up in fire around you. So it's something you need to be very, very careful of and keep your eye on the game all the time. So we know that we started off with the positive there, down, came to this one, we went up that one, we've now come to this one, we now go down to the bottom, and we're now going to bridge from there to there. So that will give us the next lead that we need. So we've got to come across the battery from there to there. Okay, now let's check to see how many volts we've from there to there. There we go, we've now got 14.57 volts, which means we now have a 4S battery. We're now going to create a 5S battery, which means we're going to be going from that point to that point, then back down the battery, and then from that point to that point will give us a 6S battery. So we now need to put another bridge across this one here. So we're going to get ourselves a, like I said, keep a piece of wire handy, just test yourself, make sure you're right, so that you're not doing anything dumb and that you're not going to get sparks flying all over the place, because that's the last thing you want, is sparks. There we go, we got 18.21 volts or 18.20 volts. That is a 5S battery. We're now going to convert the 5S to a 6S by bridging the last one. I'm pressing a foot pedal here, which is giving me the control. Right, so we got that one sparking down. Turn it around. Okay, now for sure, the only thing we have to check now is the voltage at the top of the battery here, which is going to give us, well, it's one error, and the reason it is because I'm not on enough voltage. Right, here we go, 21.8 volts, which means we now have a 6S battery that is not fully charged. So the battery itself currently is a full 6S battery. Now, bearing in mind this is a hell of a lot of power, so be careful when you're working with it. What I am going to do for the next few seconds though is I'm going to add additional strips across these strips, and the reason being is we want to ensure that the current that we carry from this battery to our quadcopter is sufficient. And if you actually do the mathematics on this 0.15 metal plate, you'll find that it doesn't quite carry sufficient power, and it's only good for around about 7 or 8 amps, and so we need a lot more than that. So all I'm going to do in the meantime is just double up on these, and I'll get back to the video shortly. Okay, so what we have now is a completed base battery, and we're now going to start adding some leads to it. So no need to use the spot welder anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to put a dot of solder on each of these areas where we're going to contact the balance wires, and we'll now show you how we do that. So we're going to just move the camera. All right, we are just about ready to start soldering, and what I'm going to do is this pen that I showed earlier on is a flux pen, and the reason for the flux pen is just to put a dab of flux on the top of each one of these areas where I'm going to put the solder. Just makes it stick a lot easier than normal. Now, the reason the soldering iron needs to be reasonably hot, and with solder what you want to do is you want to always put some solder onto your tip before you even start. Put that down because that transfers the heat. Feed the wire in, and we get a nice bubble there, which is where our balance lead's going to go. Once again, put a bit of solder on there, come down to here and feed your flux core solder in through there. Now the reason I'm showing you that we did not and we are not going to solder on the batteries is because it's a huge amount of heat that you're applying here, and it's not a good idea to overheat these batteries. So now we've got two almost perfect little dimples on there. We're now going to do the other side. Once again, I'm just going to turn the heat up a little bit more. Flux pen, just put a bit of flux on each one of these. And that way we know that everything's going to stick properly. Solder onto the actual soldering iron, feed the wire in until you get a nice little pool. Now, we've now got those ones ready and those ones ready. Now the trick here is going to be measuring how much, because here's our lead that we're going to be using, and we know that coming up to the top we're going to have 1, 2, 3 balanced leads, and we're going to have 2 short balanced leads on the top there. And we just need to work out which voltage it's going to be. Now there is a way of doing it, is you can take these out of here by just using a pair of tweezers and then pushing all the wires out, but that takes a bit of time wasting, and what I'm going to rather do is work out which wires needs to go down through. And now you'll see, for example, the reason I made those holes in the top plate was so that I could take the wire and push it straight down through there and come out the bottom. And that's the whole idea, is now once it comes out the bottom, I can then tack it straight on to where I want it, and I'm not having wires all over the place. We'll get that done in a few seconds and we'll be back with the video momentarily. Good morning guys, we're now going to do the completion of the battery, and I have done a few things at the moment which I'm going to show you. The first one is I have routed the wires that go from the balance lead through the battery pack, and as you notice I've used cap tape and stuck each wire where it is actually going to be soldered. So all I need to do now is clip it at that point, solder it to the tab, and the soldering on those is completed. In addition to which, when we get to the positive and the negative terminals on the battery, I'm now going to produce those. But what I've done is I've built these tiny little units up here, and what it consists of is 2 pieces of the 0.15 millimeter steel, and I'm going to solder the lead onto the back at that point. Then I'm going to spot weld the base one down first, then I'm going to spot weld the second one on top of the first one. And the reason I've bent them and separated them is so that they do not actually stick together while we're doing the soldering. Alright, now with regards to the wires, what we're going to do is we're going to tin them up on this side. We'll use that clamp, and again tin your iron first, bring it down to the wire and feed the wire in onto okie dokie. Now we're going to heat that one up. Feed the solder into it, and we are ready to now take either our positive or our negative lead and solder it to that one. So once again, clean your iron off, bit of solder on the tip, come down to this point, hold it, and hopefully we get a decent solder joint. And when we've finished, we should have 2 joints that look like that. And again, checking them under the scope. Yep, we're fine. So we've now got that prepared, which is going to end up going onto the battery pack. Right now we're going to move all of this out the way, and we're going to solder the leads at the battery pack to the balancer. Okay, and here we are ready to start soldering. So obviously we've straightened up these wires. We now have the black which is going to go to there, the red that's going to go to there, and the other wires that are all routed correctly through this thing. So the first one we're going to start off with is we can start off from the one closest to myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position a light for myself, purely because I like working under a light. And I'm going to remove the cap tape to start with, and I'm going to take that lead and cut it to the length that I want, which is about that long, and strip back some of the, I'm going to tin that quickly. Some tweezers to make sure we don't burn our fingers while we're doing this particular job. Again, be careful with metal tweezers on this system here. Alright, first balance lead is on, not a particularly good job. Now we're going to stick our cap tape back over the top, because that joint is actually finished. Take this one, and another joint is completed. Now what we need to do now is we need to put this one on here and that one on there, but we're going to be using these first. So okay, being careful, we're now going to bring the spot welder in there, and we want this to come out the side there. Now we've got this little bugger getting in the way for the moment. Let's put that back there again. Push up, weld on, weld on, weld on. Now I'm going to bend that tab down, because that's our second tab to be able to carry the current we want to carry from this battery. Push up, weld it on, 1, 2, 3, and that should be reasonably stiff on the battery. We're now going to come across and do the opposite side, which is our positive terminal. Struggling a bit with hands and fingers and everything in the way here. Once again, let's come across to our positive terminal, push that in there, spark it on, bend the tab down, right, we've now got, let's move you back again. We now have the battery completed to this stage with the positive and negative tabs on. We're now going to solder this piece to here, and we're going to solder that piece to there. And then that should be the end of the actual battery as far as building is concerned on the electrical side. There's our black balance lead on. That should be the end of the soldering. Okie dokie. Now let's check and see if our battery actually is the way we expected it to be. What we're going to be checking now is, first of all, we'll check the voltage of the battery cells. And we put our red in our red and our black in our black. And we've got 21.8 volts, 21.7, 21.8. So we know that's correct. We now got to the stage where we have the unit wired, soldered, ready to go. And what we're going to do now is we're going to check the balance lead to make sure it's correct. And it always starts from the black and comes across to maximum voltage. So we basically put that down on the bench, put the black wire down into there, check the first one. 3.6, which is the first 1S. 7.2, 2S. Next one along, 10.8, 3S. Next one along, 14.4, 4S. Next one along, 17, 18. That gives us our 5S, and the last one gives us the full 21 volts across the unit, which makes this a 6S battery. So we're now wired, and we are ready to basically finish this off by wrapping it. Everything is encased in cap tape. We're now going to just use standard black insulation tape, and the reason for that is I'm not able to buy shrink that will fit on here. I've tried all sorts of things and it's been a complete waste of time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use some standard good old tape and tape this up. Now when we pull down on the quad, we're going to pull down that way, so the last wrap we want to go that way. And guys, there we go, the 6S battery. And I'd like to thank you for your time, and if I can assist with anybody with ideas or where to get stuff, I'm going to put all that in the show note as well, so that you'll see I generally use Banggood for most of the stuff. I have bought the soldering iron, my chargers, my Spot Welder, and a lot of stuff from Banggood. They're a fantastic supplier. I highly recommend them. I have dealt with a few others and they've been shocking. Banggood, awesome. Thanks for your time. Hit that like button. Cheers.